Hey everybody, this is Matt from End Sickness. Today I'm going to be teaching about how mycotoxins drive chronic illness symptoms. This is from personal experience going through it myself with my daughter, many clients. This will be a great video. First I'm going to talk about what mycotoxins are, how common they are, my experiences I went through with myself, my daughter, other clients, how it all works with mycotoxins, how they can even affect your health. And I'll talk about how mycotoxin antibodies develop and what that really means, different strategies for improvement when you have mold illness or when you have mycotoxins causing your chronic health issues. And I'll talk about how you know if your current home is safe enough to make progress, or your current home is really driving your issues. And I will talk about the last thing, most important, that realizing through this process that it's not condition X or condition Y that's making me sick, it's mold, right? So I want to also specify before I go through this, I am not a medical doctor. This should be relied upon for medical advice. This is for educational and informational purposes only, and this is all based on my personal experience. So back to the good stuff here. So what are mycotoxins? Mycotoxins are compounds that are produced by mold, different types of mold, to be able to protect itself against other molds in the environment. They're basically used to outcompete or discourage the growth of other molds. So if you got 5-6 different molds in a place, they're all growing, they're going to try to produce mycotoxins so that they could grow faster than the other molds, because their mycotoxins discourage the growth of the other molds, right? So they basically are a competition mechanism. So mycotoxins, though, make human beings very sick. And now a lot of the homes that we're in are coming to, becoming pretty old. A lot of the homes in the places I lived were 50, 70, 100 years old. And over the course of that time, mold produced tons of mycotoxins. And the mycotoxins, what they do is they store in porous materials. So you could have drywall, you could have couches, you could have wood, you could have all kinds of things that when a mycotoxin is released and it saturates into this thing, it's very difficult to remove it, even getting it out of clothes, all those things. So mycotoxins are really harmful because they sabotage the immune system. They make the immune system think that it's basically fighting itself, and it starts to attack itself, and it starts to overstimulate the mast cells significantly. They start causing all kinds of issues, creating inflammation to foods, to other things in the environment, to stress reactions, to hot, to cold, pretty much to anything. So mycotoxins are extremely, extremely bad for the body. They were so bad they were used in warfare, trichothecenes, to be able to affect the other people. So how common are mycotoxins? Mycotoxins are very common because they found that at least 2/3 of the homes in the United States right now have elevated levels of mold. And that's not even testing mycotoxins, that's just testing the mold, so the mycotoxins would be even worse, right? So what I found is, in my personal experience, it took us, without realizing what we were trying to accomplish in testing the homes. I mean, we had to go to, out of 8 places, there were 6 that were conducive for my daughter to heal, I would say 3 out of every 4 places were problems. There were problems, right? So, you really, when you have mycotoxin illness, you have to be very specific about where you choose to live because of how common this is. They've shown over 50% of commercial buildings have significant mold issues when tested by the EPA, right? Over 50%, all right? Upwards of 80% even in some cities. So my experiences, okay, I got really sick years ago, didn't realize it was due a lot to mold exposure, being in a home that had mold, and thought it was all due to infection, thought it was all due to all these other things, until I got my daughter and I got custody of her, and she was extremely sick for a number of years. I didn't know what to do. I kept thinking it was infection with her. She couldn't get any better. Eventually realized that it was mold, and she went from disabled to well, to completely well, symptom-free, living a normal life. And this was a miracle. It completely opened my eyes to what the possibilities were with mold and how much it was affecting so many people with these quote-unquote chronic illnesses, the autoimmune disease, the fibromyalgia like I was diagnosed with, the IBS, the SIBO even, all these things that people thought were these conditions, in fact, were caused by mold exposure, chronic mold exposure, or antibodies. So how it all works, okay, when you get exposed to mold, most people don't get sick. But if you have a severely compromised immune system at the time, you just got put on antibiotics, you just had a surgery, had a very stressful event, a death in the life, all these things combine together and make your immune system and your nervous system hyper responsive to other threats. So then once you get exposed and you're in a house that has moderate exposure, all of a sudden it becomes heightened exposure for you because your body's so sensitive. Then you produce antibodies, these mycotoxin antibodies, okay? And the mycotoxin antibodies are the thing that people don't understand about mold illness. Once you're exposed and you produce the antibodies to this, then now your immune system's looking for it, and every time that you inhale, your body's could be having a reaction, right? And then people think, oh, it's because of this illness, it's that illness, it's not. Now, often it's the mycotoxin antibodies that have developed that are actually causing the symptoms, right? So mycotoxin antibodies, once they develop, you have to eliminate exposure and then be out of exposure, consistent exposure for sometimes months, years, to not have these antibodies, you know? You could get a big chunk of progress, you could heal, you could get all better, but you could still have the mycotoxin antibodies that if you went into a house that had mold and it was real heavy, that within a matter of, you know, weeks, you would start feeling unwell, right? And this isn't once again, this isn't fibromyalgia, it's not rheumatoid arthritis, it's not these mystical conditions that are made up words that people made up. It is mycotoxin antibodies that you have. So it's very important to distinguish when you're dealing with these illnesses, what the heck's going on, so you don't get caught in some illusion, in some prognosis of what's going to happen based upon other people who have been in this situation, all that trap, that illusion, that is the diagnosis, right? Strategies for improvement, okay? When you're in this situation, if you're completely disabled, reacting to every food, have neurological symptoms, you know, severe skin issues, reactions to sun, pain all over the body, that type of thing, then you got to get out of the house. I mean, the house is going to be more than likely, or the apartment, whatever it is going to be the issue, okay? But if you are dealing with, you know, relatively moderate symptoms that have been chronic over some time, first you got to look at what you're eating, what we're consuming. You know, we got to get rid of the eggs, the dairy, the nuts, the seeds, the gluten, eating too much meat, you know, the processed foods, etc. See how much progress comes there. You know, then we got to start looking at how much stress is in our life, our emotional stress. Then we got to start working on meditation, slow deep breathing, as you'll see in some of my other videos. I give instructions on how to do the slow deep breathing. You got to do this consistently and be committed to being able to change your diet, change your stress routine. You know, start to take only plant-based supplements that modulate the immune system. This is what I do with clients. This is how we approach it. When they're living in a house, they can't move, and they're sick, we go, okay, let's examine the diet. Let's create a dietary log. Let's go ahead and see exactly what we're eating, what's making us feel worse. Okay, let's do our meditations twice a day. Let's do the deep breathing. Now, when I say these things, it may make you uncomfortable because it requires a lot of personal change. But these are things that once you do them, it can last and you can see permanent change. And you don't have to rely on something external like supplements or somebody else's opinion or another doctor or whatever it is. These are things that will help you find relief and be able to overcome the condition that you believe that you want to beat, that is so tough to beat, right? I've had 7-8 different conditions that were supposedly not fixable that I was able to overcome. These all are possibility. Incurable is just an opinion. Incurable is just an opinion, right? So, current home, is it safe? As I said, if you're reacting to everything under the sun, you're disabled, you're pretty much just unable to tolerate any foods, you know, then yes, we need to start looking at other options. We'll talk about how to go ahead and test, you know, this mymycolab.com test, as I talked about in my other videos. Look at my other videos. But if you're just feeling unwell most of the time, you know, and you're not reacting with throat closing, heart palpitations, pain all over the body when you're eating, you know, you're not having reactions to all the smells, you're not having seizures, those things, then you probably can make a lot of progress without leaving the house, you know. So if you have any questions about all this, please get in touch with me. It is not condition X or condition Y, you know. I mean, condition X is the same thing as rheumatoid arthritis. They just named it rheumatoid arthritis, you know. So it's not condition X. It is mold often, right? Not always, but it's either what we're consuming, what we're inhaling, or some form of stress that's causing our symptoms. If we're willing to look in those 3 areas and make changes, we can overcome these things. If we're willing to believe that it's some external condition that's controlling our internal circumstances, it'll always be that way. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please join my page. Go to my website, endsickness.org. Look more about my background, and I hope to see you guys soon. Happy healing, everyone.